Greetings everyone, allow myself to introduce myself. My name's Jay Hall, and welcome to the realist review of Star Wars The Last Jedi. Who is The Last Jedi? Well, they've already come out and said before the movie was even released, it's Luke, so sorry to spoil that one for you. We're going to spend a little time at the beginning of this review talking about the movie, spoiler-free, discussing the film. Not giving out any huge details, but a little bit here and there maybe. Then later we'll go full spoiler mode to break this down in its entirety. We'll begin with the movie as a whole. It's good. I'm not going to sit here and, suck Star Wars or Disney D and tell you it's the greatest movie since the original Star Wars or Empire. It's not. It's a fun film overall that I liked more than The Force Awakens. While that played it super safe with the plot and was only saved by its characters and the fact that it was the first Star Wars movie in 32 years that didn't completely suck ass, this movie does not have that luxury. It has to contend with a couple newer Star Wars films, of Force Awakens and Rogue One, that were released in the past couple years. I feel like one of its greatest strengths is how little nostalgia it leans on. Yeah, there's the rare cameo or callback, but it doesn't stick out like a sore thumb or feel forced, no pun intended. It's the first of the few newer films that has the balls to not use this. The plot is not a copy-paste of Empire, but it does share a lot of similar traits. Namely, it's basically a run from the Empire, or First Order in this case. The rebellion's on their last breath, only a few ships left, dwindling numbers, no friends are riding to their aid. The Republic is completely gone. Yeah, that 30-second clip in The Force Awakens, that's all you're gonna get. Hell, I didn't even realize what happened in The Force Awakens till my third time viewing it, and that's after I watched all the analysis and breakdowns I could find. The way they present the story is rather unique for an entire film, and while it does have its strengths in doing something different, it also comes with a lot of flaws, and I mean some major flaws that are very difficult to ignore. Battles and the like are decent, much more gritty and grounded, less fantasized. One particular, fisticuffs, I liked a lot, but you can't win them all in that department. I still prefer the TR-8R fight from The Force Awakens. And speaking of the Force, they play fast and loose with the Force rules. I understand you have to innovate and come up with new ways to use the Force besides, as Luke so eloquently puts it, picking up rocks. But this was a little much here. Not like Kylo stopping a blaster bolt, which was pretty badass. More so some stuff where you're pulling a, that's not how the Force works. Once again, the characters are great, returning and new. Mark Hamill does a better job than I ever expected him to do, and the late Carrie Fisher gets a lot more screen time this round, which I think she uses quite well. All the other returning cast do great, especially Daisy Ridley. She is the star again, but particularly Adam Driver. I think he did a much better job in this film. I think this has to do with him not wearing his mask nearly as much and not having that attached to his character, where he's able to thrive without it. The new characters, Kelly Marie Tran, Benicio del Toro, and Laura Dern all do great in their respective roles, except Laura Dern's character role sucks. It's awful, like really bad. We'll go into detail on that on spoilers. There's still a massive Han-shaped hole left, though, which nobody's able really to fill. Hopefully we'll get that in the next movie. Shit, it will be in the next movie. We're getting a Han Solo film next, baby. Yeah! In conclusion, for the spoiler-free section, this really seemed like it was a movie focused on getting past the old and bringing in the new. Hell, they even had a line that specifically said just that. You can't live off nostalgia forever, and I think this is the first Disney-ified Star Wars to do just that. It has its growing pains in that regard, but I think the franchise will be better as a whole in the long run because of it. Okay, now we're jumping into spoilers. That is full spoilers from here on out. If you don't want anything spoiled, here's your chance. Spoilers, spoilers, spoilers. Okay, did we get that through? Do you get it now? Stop watching if you don't want to know. Right now. Okay, we're getting into it. First things first, something that is a little small but bugged me nonetheless. They really did that to Captain Phasma. Instead of righting the wrongs of the past with Boba Fett and a certain Sarlacc pit and jetpack, I think we all remember how that one turned out, they go full Boba Fett with Captain Phasma. She gets the same treatment. She's only in the movie about 5 minutes, and she basically kicks Finn's ass when she fights him. But then Finn randomly comes up an elevator, smacks her in the face with one hit, and then she falls down and is engulfed in flames as the ship explodes. And that's it. Captain Phasma's dead. That's all you're going to get from her. I thought they were going to do a much better job with her in this film, but they happen to do worse somehow. Next up is my biggest gripe, the dumbass Force rules.
That's not how the Force works.
First off, Leia. Here was your opportunity to let Leia exit the series. I mean, it's no mystery that they can't have her in episode 9, and she basically dies in this movie for them to bring her back using the Force. She's out floating in space, basically dead, she reaches out and pulls herself back into the ship after her bridge had been blown up by Kylo Ren's fighters. Not Kylo Ren himself, he wasn't able to pull the trigger. But this was your opportunity to do that, and you decided not to. I feel like she didn't really have that much of an issue, like if you could have taken her out of the film at any point, really. She was there, she did a good job, but she was not required to drive the film forward. So why didn't they do this? Do they have some stock footage left over, maybe? That's about the only thing I can think of where she could exit the film gracefully. The next one is Luke projecting himself to Kylo across the galaxy. I don't have any issues with, you know, maybe manipulating someone's mind where they can see you, but in this, the whole entire First Order can see Luke on the planet, and they all think he's actually there. It's not just Kylo. Everyone thinks he's there. How does this even work? I don't understand. There's been no hint of this with the Force at all. I mean, besides the tricking a few people to see something different, that's about it. Other than that, no. I don't see this. No, just no. The third and final is something I actually didn't dislike. I actually enjoyed it. The ability for Rey and Kylo to speak with one another across the galaxy. It wasn't like with Luke. They understood they were in a projection and they were talking. I mean, they get cozy. They get to know each other through their, you know, fireside and steamy shower time chats. I mean, don't read too much into that. But I really actually like this. I thought this was the one thing that the Force could do, and it worked out really well in the story's favor. It helped out Rey and Kylo a lot, when otherwise they wouldn't have had many people to talk to besides Luke and Snoke. Now we have the shitty chase plot.
We'll head him off at the pass!
A fleet of Star Destroyers is running down a resistance ship that's low on fuel, has shields directly on the back, nothing guarding the front. All of their fighters are destroyed, and you decide to just hang back and lob shots at them over and over until they run out of fuel and you can destroy them. There were so many opportunities where they could have just ended this immediately. They could have sent a Star Destroyer ahead. They could have sent fighters out. They could have done a number of things, and they decide, nah, we're not going to do any of that. We're just going to sit back, relax, buddy, we got him. And also the manufactured tension of the entirety of Laura Dern's character. She comes on as the commander after Princess Leia is brought in a coma, I guess. I still think that's super dumb that they did that. But anyway, she takes over, and at first it seems like she's very inept at leading. She doesn't know what she's doing. And then it later becomes apparent that maybe she's doing this on purpose, trying to destroy the resistance. And at this point, Poe Dameron, who is a hot-headed, loyal, you know, smart guy, goes, I'm not going to put up with this shit. We're going to mutiny. We're going to take this ship over and we're going to do something about it instead of just sitting here waiting to die. Well, then they do that, and Laura Dern's character fights back. I can't remember her name. It was Vice Admiral Nordo or something like that. But she fights back. And then they're in the command center, door busts open, Princess Leia walks in, and basically calls them all dumbasses. For no apparent reason, they were trying to save the ship because, well, from all they could gather, Laura Dern was trying to kill everyone. I didn't understand this at all. And they basically write it off as, oh, you should have listened to her. She knew what she was doing all along. Well, couldn't you have at least told the people what was going to happen, that you had a plan? I mean, maybe you're worried about a mole on the ship since they were able to track you through hyperspace, but still, let a few people know so everyone's not just freaking out thinking they're all gonna die. This was terrible leadership capability on her part and just lazy story-wise to make us think that this was gonna happen. She just feels out of place and not how a leader would act in that situation. Granted, she wasn't the appointed leader. It was basically by default since Leia was out of commission, but still. It was so manufactured and fake. I hated this portion of the movie. It was probably my least favorite part. She does set up my favorite scene though, which I mean gives her a little bit of a pass. And once again, I'm not trying to sound crass, but this was your perfect opportunity to give Princess Leia the send-off she deserves. Kylo Ren's there. He's able to murder his father, no problem, because he hated him, but he can't do it on his mother. So his TIE fighters come in, blow up the bridge. All the leaders of the resistance are sucked out into space. And I think that would have been a decent end for Princess Leia. Maybe not the best possible end, but with what you were given, what else can you come up with? Like I said, there is either the found footage where they have the extra footage that they could use, but are you really going to have that much to work with? They could either do that or do it off screen, which would be an insult to her, or they could do it with a CGI double, which would also be an insult to her. So I really hope that they didn't pass on this for something more half-assed down the line. I just don't want them to fuck this up. She deserves much more than a half-assed effort. They did include a small thing in the credits for her in loving memory of Carrie Fisher, which was a nice touch. Up next, we have Finn and Rose going on an adventure.
I'm going on an adventure!
These characters meet basically because Finn wants to dip out again. I mean, he's running away constantly. His excuse is he doesn't want Rey to come back and, you know, be captured by the First Order, blah, blah, blah. Okay, Finn, we get it. But Rose figures out that he's actually trying to do this, so she shocks him, starts taking him to the brig, where they discuss and figure out that they're getting tracked through lightspeed. And how can they handle this? Finn knows how, even though, I mean, all he did was mop the floors, but he still apparently knows everything about the inner workings of a ship. Anyway, but besides that, they talk to Poe, and this is when they figure out the, you know, whole plan for the mutiny taking over and what they're going to do to stop it. So they head off to this casino planet, which I think is really well designed. The music for it was my favorite part of the film. It's like actual good cantina music, as opposed to episode 7's cantina music. No, not good. They have to find a master code breaker because Maz, remember her, she tells them that it's basically this one guy, the master code breaker, that is the only one in the galaxy that can break through the First Order's shields and security systems so they don't know they're there and allow them to disable this tracking device. Finn spends his time marveling at how amazing this world is, while Rose, you know, takes a more realistic approach and shows him, you know, this is what happens because of the First Order and the Resistance War. These people are profiting off this war, selling weapons, selling supplies, selling materials for these factions, and they're just getting filthy rich off of it and stomping down on the people beneath them. You can see, you know, a few slave children tending to the whatever donkey horse things are in the stables. And I actually really like this because it paints Star Wars in a much different light than it ever has been before. It's not really righteous versus evil for these people. It's all about making that money, making that sweet dollar bills. That's all that matters to them. They couldn't give a shit who's fighting and why. War makes them rich and it gives them powerful influence. Who can argue with that? This is a situation that I feel like we're becoming a little bit too much familiar with in the real world, which is why they wanted to touch on it in the film. All right, off my soapbox now. They don't end up getting the Master Codebreaker. They end up throwing in jail trying to find him, but they've settled for this BJ guy. Benicio del Toro is who plays him, and he does the exact same thing, so I don't really understand why it was such a big deal to get this Master Codebreaker. But anyway, he drives the point home even further, showing Finn that they're not only profiting off the First Order buying their stuff, they're also selling to the Resistance. So it's two sides of the same coin. They're selling to both people, making money on both ends. Now for Rey and Luke.
That is why you fail.
It is a little bit like Yoda and Luke in The Empire Strikes Back. I like this plotline a lot. Daisy and Mark did extremely well together. Rey is this super eager student at her first day in school, and you know, she's trying to piece her life together, get everything figured out, and Luke takes the lightsaber, looks at it, tosses it over his shoulder, and goes, I'm not teaching you. That's it, I'm done. Nah, I'm kidding. He eventually decides to teach her, but he doesn't really do much of anything though. He's closed off from the Force, so he can't experience it, and quite frankly, he never was much of a teacher to begin with. One exchange, he does a great job explaining the Force to Rey, no midichlorians included, mind you, where he once again sees her raw power, and he gets spooked immediately and just runs off saying, I've seen this raw power before, I'm not doing this again. Isn't that the point of a teacher, Luke, to harness that potential and focus it? He also has some wisdom on why the Jedi were failures and why he thinks they need to die. Basically, the Force is ever present in all things, and it's hubris to think that the Jedi are the only ones privy to it, and if the Jedi die, the Force dies. That's not how it works. Basically, the Force don't need no Jedi. Look at what it's done for Rey, where she has no connection with any Force-wielding characters in the universe that we know of. My aforementioned Rey and Kylo chats are what kind of brings an end to this plotline, because they both convince each other that the other one's going to turn to the light and the dark, and vice versa. So that she goes off to go talk to her new boyfriend, or whatever you want to call it. I mean, she did see him shirtless. Luke stays on the island, though, and wrestles some more with ending the Jedi. He goes as far as threatening to burn the old Jedi temple. I don't want to call it a temple, but where the old Jedi texts are stored with all the knowledge. He goes as far as threatening to do it, at which point Force Ghost Yoda pops up, basically calls him a pussy, and does it himself with a bolt of lightning. Yoda goes on to say, you know, these texts have knowledge, but there's nothing in those books that needs to be taught that Rey doesn't already know, where people that are Force sensitive don't already know about the Force or feel through the Force. So you don't need those to start a new, not Jedi Order, but a new faith based around it, I guess Yoda's going for. But he says the Jedi can die too, because they failed, as he knows they failed. Kylo is still emo. You thought this was gonna change? It did seem so at first when he was really feeling a pull towards the light, struggling with killing his dad still. Snoke rubs his face in this a lot, and not being able to kill his mother. His cross-galaxy FaceTimes with Rey do wonders for his character development, and it gives reason as to why he turned towards the darkness to begin with. Basically, he was experimenting with the dark side at the time. I mean, which one of us hasn't when we were young? And Luke felt this in him, and he goes to confront him about it, but he, goes in there when Kylo's asleep. He feels around in his mind. He can feel that he's feeling these dark things. I said feeling about 27 times there. Sorry about that. Anyway, Luke, for a split second, whips out his lightsaber and thinks he's going to murder Kylo in cold blood, I guess. And Kylo wakes up, sees him over him with a lightsaber, and basically goes, okay, screw this, I'm out. Fights Luke off a little bit, goes up, destroys everything, and basically is picked up by the, dark side Talon agent Snoke out in the vast wilderness of space. He could feel this power as well. When he and Rey actually meet face to face, they're actually pretty nice to each other because they think they can turn one another to the other side. Kylo then brings her to Supreme Leader Snoke, who is the Galactic E-Harmony mastermind behind their little chats, and shows her that, I was planting these visions of him being good in your mind. He's not gonna do it, just letting you know. And he says, well, the only reason I brought you here was to find Luke and kill him, which he extracts the information. He then tells Kylo, you kill her. This is the final step in your training, or something along those lines. Kylo, in his infinite wisdom for the dark side, decides, nope, I'm not going to kill her. Flips the lightsaber sitting next to Snoke, cuts him in half. I don't know if he's dead or not yet. He could come back, though. Remember Darth Maul in the Clone Wars? Rey and Kylo then fight off the entirety of the Royal Guard, who apparently wear all different uniforms now, because why? Merchandising, I guess. You can sell 27 different action figures of them. Anywho, it is a cool fight scene where they actually work pretty well together. And now Kylo's finally good, right? Nope. Basically, he offers her the same choice Vader offered Luke, where he goes, join me. We can rule the galaxy. We are the two most powerful beings present right now. This is also when he gives the line of, we killed off the old, we are the new. We need to do this together. I want you to do it with me. This is not where I have a problem with Kylo. Up until this point, he got way more and much better character development than in Force Awakens. However, when he gets rejected by Rey, he immediately goes back to that stupid emo boy wanting to blast everything in sight, throw his lightsaber around, and throw some tantrums. So, it was all for naught. The final portion of the film begins with the Resistance fleeing their flagship under the idea that their transport ships will be cloaked from the First Order. They will not be able to be fired upon. That's until BJ, Mr. Not Codebreaker, but still a thief, sells them out. He's just a simple man trying to make his way in the universe. It's either that or get killed, and since his morals are, let's say, quite flexible, he chooses the former. Finn calls him out for this, which I love his response to it as well. He goes, this is not right. And BJ goes, maybe. This is kind of the whole idea, which I think they're going to explore more with Episode 9, where it's not just about the wars, it's about the people behind the wars. So the ships are getting blown to pieces. Finn and Rose are about to be executed by Captain Phasma. Vice Admiral Holdo, who is now the only one on the Rebel flagship, decides she's going to take her ship, ram it into the big-ass motherfucking First Order ship with light speed. Incredible scene and visual. It makes me wonder why they just don't build some ships specifically for that. Maybe have engines and a remote control, and all you have to do is go to light speed through something that big, and it instantly destroys half of it. The Phasma fight then happens. I don't want to talk about it. And all the remaining rebels make it down to the surface and into the base and send out a distress signal using Princess Leia's personal code. Nobody answers though. Basically, they're all accepting death at this point because they're staring down the barrel of a laser battering ram and a fleet of AT-ATs with only a few surface skimmers on their side. The Falcon shows up with Rey, Chewie, and some Porgs who are fucking adorable, and Kylo goes ballistic, full emo, and orders all his fighters to chase it down and destroy it. He hates that ship. Finn tries to sacrifice himself to save the Resistance, but for whatever reason, Rose stops him from doing this, even though it probably would have saved everyone. Which she explains away with the line, we don't beat them by killing them, we beat them by saving us. I don't know, it really was weird and kind of dumb, I thought. Maybe it had some meaning to some people, but if you're going to win a war, you kind of have to kill the enemy to do it, right? Luke then shows up to save the day with a short hello to Leia, and then he promptly goes out onto the battlefield standing there. Kylo sees him, freaks out, orders all the AT-ATs to fire on him simultaneously for like a solid 30 or so seconds, completely losing it. Again, General Hux is the one that finally calls it off. After the dust clears though, Luke's still there, just dusting off the shoulder. That's all he has to do. That's all the damage he takes because he's a hologram. Force rules, who needs him? Kylo don't notice though, so he goes down there to fight him off fisticuffs style, 1v1 bro. Buying the Resistance enough time to escape, following the cute little frost foxes out an exit and having Rey lift up You guessed it, some rocks with the Force. Nothing special about the saber fight between the former master and apprentice, because Luke all he does is dodge, since he is a hologram. You know, he doesn't want to give it away by getting sliced in half right away and nothing happening. It does eventually happen though, and Kylo figures it out. At which point Luke responds, you know, even if you did kill me, would it help? I would be with you, just like your father. That guilt on you entirely, all the time. He still senses that confliction in Kylo, but he doesn't really do anything to pull him back to the light. He basically prods him even further, and he kind of seems like an asshole. I mean, I know the dude's your nephew, and he's a little bit of a dick, but you could at least try to be nice and try to teach him. The film essentially ends there with Luke presumably dying from casting his Force ghost across the entirety of the galaxy back in his little hovel, and then vanishing himself like Obi-Wan and Yoda have. The Resistance all escape on the Falcon, and when I say all of them, I mean all of them. Like 20 of them fit on the ship, and that is all the Resistance has left. And the First Order is now led by an overly emotional teenager, although Hux does look like he's going to get a little bit more character development trying to lead them, because he tried to stand up to him, but was immediately just tossed aside forcefully, literally with the Force, by Kylo when he tried to stand up to him. The final shot is of a slave stable boy from the casino area that encountered Finn and Rose when they were there. You get a small glimpse that he is Force sensitive when he grabs the broom and just starts sweeping, and he is still wearing the rebellion symbol on the ring that Rose gave him. So this is kind of like maybe the poor people will rise up and fight for the Resistance against the First Order. Resistance is about to start recruiting child soldiers. They're worse than Coney 2012. In the end, I'm going to give this film a B. It's better than average, but there still is a lot holding it back from being great. Mainly the chase plot and a few fumblings with characters. All in all, I'm excited for the future of the franchise and Episode 9, especially with this cast in place who did a fantastic job and were the best part of the film once again. Just don't screw up Leia, okay, Disney? With that said, I'd like to thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed this Realist review, make sure you give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more to come. I'll catch you on the flip side.